Welcome back for the second part of our discussion on Turkey and its foreign policy. The other issue in Turkey is, of course, the issue of Justice and Development Party being somewhat closer to Islamic forces in Turkey itself, which have clashed with the secular military forces earlier. Now, how would you read this? Is it, in that sense, rising Islamic identity politics in Turkey? Would you say that this is more an aspiration of a nationalist kind or a combination of the two? How would you read this?
Well, the way I read it actually, Pravir, is that the Kemalist secularism is irreversible in Turkey. The only question is, are you going to live that secularism in the way of the Istanbul hot bourgeoisie, which is a small upper-class minority?
Which identifies much more with the West.
Absolutely with the West, which has a great contempt for most of Turkey.
And for West Asia, and for Central Asia,
absolutely,
and so on.
Absolutely. Back to that whole history of their own, their region, everything else. And last 50, 60, 70 years, their policy has been based on that, has been made by that Turkish bourgeoisie and the military and so on and so forth. Or is there going to be a secularism which is the sort of secularism Western countries have? It's actually, in my view, the real parallel for AKP is European Christian democracy. Conservative, socially, right-wing, much more prone to neoliberal policies, and so on, but a bourgeois in its own way.
And nationalist in its
orientation and so on.
In Europe, it could be even national chauvinist.
Yes, and they are completely determined to become members of the EU. So in that sense also, Turkey is emerging as an arbiter of relations between the so-called Muslim countries and the Christian West. And therefore, with Spain, it is organizing this thing of dialogue of civilizations, or whatever it is, this UN initiative for peace between Islam and Christianity and so on and so forth. They also understand that the Arab bourgeoisies are anti-Turkish. So they have to bypass those bourgeoisies, the ruling elites, and get to the Arab populations in general. I don't want to use the word masses because what I want to include in it is the mercantile bourgeoisies of the Arab world, who also are socially conservative, very much, have all kinds of sentiments about Palestine and so on and so forth. So if Turkey takes an sort of mildly Muslim identity and jumps into the issue of Palestine, it has a tremendous sort of, and this 70 years of anti-Turkish sentiment can be combated. They can find markets in these places and they can get the Middle East to enter.
You know, the interesting part is the current foreign minister. He has talked about Turkey becoming a gate, not a bridge, because bridge is too passive. And bridge means that the West gets into West Asia through Turkey. So being a gate somehow seems to be more active in his view. So this is really what others have called that the Turkish flag has followed its economy. And at the moment, I think 20% of their entire foreign exports take place to West Asia and 50% with Europe. So the increasing size of the trade links with West Asia is becoming very evident. But there's one issue I would like to ask you. Do you think the EU, given the post-9/11 scenario, do you think that EU is going to actually accept Turkey as a EU member, given the level of Islamophobia we are now seeing in a lot of these European countries?
Listen, European ruling elites are perfectly sane and sensible and rational and shrewd people. They understand that this Islamophobia is bogus. Their problem with Turkey is that if Turkey comes fully into Europe, Turkey and Germany will dictate the terms. Turkey has the largest, much the largest military power, Turkey has a very powerful bourgeoisie, which is going places. Demographically, Turkey is equal to Germany, no other European country. Their actual thing is that the very nature of EU will get transformed. And do you want to have inside the EU the largest army, which is a Muslim army? That is the real, I mean, if there is Islamophobia, it is of that kind, a very fundamental kind, you know. They understand AKP. Christian Democrats can't possibly have a problem with AKP.
The first 7 years of AKP, they've been very close to EU and all the European powers.
You see, that thinking in Turkey actually, in my view, started changing. It has gelled now. It started changing first with the territorial collapse of the Soviet Union, where all these Turkic mini-states became independent, and there was and there still is a tremendous upheaval in all of them. And Turkey looks at that both as opportunity and a problem. And the Iran-Iraq war, which in those dollar terms cost Turkey about $20 billion. They took the flak for that. I mean, economically, they took the flak for that war. I think these two events actually precipitated the rethinking of then the crisis of Kemalism internally. Thirdly, very important, Prabir, membership application in the EU serves a function to ward off military coups. You have to show some human rights record. You have to keep military out of politics. Latest law passed in the Turkish parliament is that a military officer can be tried in civil courts. This is all to show EU. Now, will EU give them a membership? Even their foreign minister says that the target is full membership by 2023, right? 13 years from now. So
they're quite happy to be a part of this application. It gives them all the economic benefits.
That's right. So long as, their main interest is open field in Europe. There's now a Turkish bourgeoisie which wants to invest in Europe, capital. They want to send capital. You know, we were talking earlier about how their Turkish interests are expanding into West Asia and so on and so forth. That certainly is true. But in the long term, Turkey has opened several new embassies in Africa and is about to open 11 more. Turkish language schools are being opened in the Far East, in Latin America, and in Africa. What they foresee is that, like China, though not on the scale of China, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, Turkey will be a world economic power.
Of course, it's comparable to its size. It's obviously a clear possibility.
Right. And therefore, they have to create soft power, as American parlance calls it, cultural offensive, this, that, and the other, and so on. And this is also asserting a national identity quite different from EU. You know, this is Turkish national identity.
How will they do all this without finally resolving the Kurdish issue? Because AKP started, Erdogan started with saying he will have an opening towards the Kurds. There will be various discussions held. It's not been borne out. In fact, they have backed off now, and basically the Kurdish problem remains where they are. Do you think it's possible to do all the things they want to do without resolving that issue?
2 or 3 responses quickly. Prabir, first of all, 60% of foreign investment in Iraqi Kurdistan is Turkish. All the oil exploration projects in Iraqi Kurdistan are Turkish. Turkey has just opened a very major consulate in Erbil. So that's one way of dealing with the Kurdish question inside Turkey. My second observation is that if Erdogan really moved rapidly on that issue, the crisis with the military will come. It is not Erdogan, it's not AKP which is going so slow on it. It is the fear of military intervention. Therefore, they're doing all of this other stuff of culture and so on. Mind you, the vote bank which made or brought Erdogan where he is now, first he became the mayor of Istanbul, and the huge Kurdish vote in Istanbul went to him. So he has had a very interesting relationship with the Kurds. Under this business of we have to show the EU, they now have judicial commissions which are retraining Turkish judiciary in the issues of how to dispense justice to Kurds when it comes to Kurds. My friends in Turkey tell me, who are involved in this process, that it's much easier to train Kurdish judiciary posted in Kurdistan than it is to train Kurdish judiciary sitting in Istanbul, and so on. So they are going very slow, but they are moving on various fronts, and with very sensitive thing about the economic, cultural interests of the Kurdish population and so on. It will take them a while. The same thing is happening with Armenia. They take a very strong position on, all these things that the U.S. Senate wants, U.S. Congress wants to pass Armenian genocide and so on. But they are normalizing relationships with Armenia, and they are now establishing a joint commission for the study of the question of the genocide. In other words, they are opening themselves up to, etc. The problem in this is the military on the question of Kurdistan and the whole of the Turkish bourgeoisie on the question of Armenia. Erdogan is actually much more flexible. AKP as such is actually much more flexible.
I think that brings us to a close of the issue. The emergence of Turkey is certainly taking place in the backdrop, as you said, of US secular decline over time, and also Turkey's own economy booming post-financial crisis. Of course, we'll have to see how the specific issue of the post-flotilla inquiry, what Turkey has demanded, all this plays out. But nevertheless, very clear that Turkey is shifted its foreign policy, and this is not something which is temporary but will continue for some time. Thanks a lot, Aijaz. Hope that we'll have you more with us on this kind of issues.
Thank you very much.